back to Getting to the Top, where I interview and introduce you to phenomenal leaders who are blazing a new trail and really sharing with us their leadership journey experience. Today, I have with me Tricia Kissoon. She is the Chief Executive Officer of JMMB Investments and Securities. She joined JMMB in March of 2020. Think of a better time to join somewhere just before COVID shut down. And she has more than 15 years experience in the financial services sector. Tricia's passion and drive have established her as an expert in the field of investments. And her focus has been primarily on asset management for mutual funds and insurance portfolios. She has a Master's of Business Administration from the Edinburgh Business School and a Bachelor of Science degree in Economics and Finance from the University of West Indies. She is incredibly qualified, and her directorships include Securities Dealers Association of Trinidad and Tobago and Mutual Fund Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you and welcome, Tricia.
Hi, thank you for having me here, Racquel. This is exciting.
Lovely. So the first thing that we always start off with is asking you, in your words, to introduce yourself.
Well, I think having, had heard of my professional side, it would be fun to know who I am as a person. My lines are, I'm a fun-loving, excitable person. I love life. I love the journey of life, its ups and downs. I'm an adventure seeker, like yourself. I do love a good zip lining. I've jumped out of a plane as well. Nice. In a tandem dive. Skydive. It's me. I'm just fun. I'm loving. I enjoy spending time with my family, and I'm just people oriented. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That is great, and I like that. You've given us some insight into the personal side of you, which is great. So, when did you know that you first wanted to lead? How did that happen for you?
So that's an interesting question. For me, it was so long ago. It was very, very long ago. I think that came very, very early, not just in my career, but early in my upbringing, because of who my mom was and how she led. She ran Astor Cinema. She was the manager of Astor Cinema and a couple other cinemas around that time. So very strong woman, my mom was a single parent to me, and I'm the only child. So I just grew up seeing this strong woman doing amazing things. And for me, it was always that I have to be something great, and I have to be something phenomenal. As I went on into secondary school, leadership was definitely there. When I remember at university, I was having a conversation with a colleague, a classmate, and I was telling him, I'm going to be in corporate and I'm going to be phenomenal in corporate. So I always knew corporate life was going to be the life for me. I decided very early in my career, CEO was going to be part of that part. I just didn't expect it to be at a very young age. I thought it was going to be at the latter part of my career because that's what you grow up to believe. It's going to be later down at pre-retirement and those sort of things. And leading is something that I've wanted to do all my life. And I just lived around that perspective and work towards achieving that.
So then how did this happen in your career? Tell us about your career. Like, where did you start? What was your first job? And then how did you end up here?
So, like, if you start post university, my first job would have been at the Ministry of Trade.
Nice.
So I started, like, my first two jobs were actually in the areas of trade, contract roles. I worked at the Ministry of Trade under Minister Valley at the time. And that was for a couple of months exploring market opportunities in other jurisdictions. And then I went on to work for another company named Procomer, which was the Costa Rican export-import company, kind of finding opportunities. And, surprisingly enough, I switched hats and went on to work for CariChris as a research associate. And that's when I got my solid exposure into finance. Now, my underlying degree is in finance, so I really wanted to get in. But as you know, you have to walk your way through different things in life. And that just led from one thing to another in the areas of finance. And my anchoring of my career was really at Answer Merchant, where I got real exposure to, as an investment analyst, to the field that I'm exactly operating in. So so it really was from that path, that area, and then I got an opportunity to basically establish a department, investment department. Having, when you're working a very small shop, you have the ability to wear multiple hats, and that is something that I did very well in my 20s. You want something done in accounting, I'm going to be there. You want something done, in exactly what I came in to do, investments. You want something to be done in mutual fund calculation or any administration. I'm there. It gave me my 20s. I took real I took advantage of the real opportunities in front of me, which was, if someone didn't want to do it, I got it done.
Okay.
What that allowed me to do is build a level of flexibility and tenacity that now gave me that opportunity to establish a unit, which was my last job function, where I established the unit, the investment unit, to build all the foundations that was necessary. I was actually telling someone recently, I worked for 2 years standalone, creating that foundation before we did more people. And I did that for like 7 years. And then that really, when you're a creator of that space, it gives you a level of confidence that you can execute on. And that basically is the path that got me here, sitting as the CEO of JMMB Investments and Securities.
Fabulous, fabulous. So much rich detail to get into. So you are in your 20s and working for a small shop. And I think I recommend this to so many women looking to get into the C-suite, because there are opportunities that working in a small organization, you will have that visibility, that ability to create transformational change, that opportunity to, fill a space that no one else is willing to take on. But in your 20s, in this small shop, starting up this department, weren't you scared?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
The answer could be no. And I'd love that. I feel like sometimes in our 20s, we're more fearless because you're not as aware of what could go wrong.
Yeah. So I think it was the guiding force for me was my 20s is to soak everything up. It was to soak everything up. So yeah, I might have gotten stuff wrong. I might have gotten, challenged, in different forms, but it was just like, I'm just going to take all of it. Bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. I'm going to take all of it. This is my learning curve. And that's how I took my whole of my 20s. And for me, for some reason, I had a very interesting perspective of life, right? And I'll share it with you. I share it with some people sometimes, but this will share it in a whole other way, right? I believed that my 20s was foundation. So you put in all the work that you could possibly put in. And my 30s, I'm like, that's just gonna set the tone and give me, so I just basically bucket my life in 10-year periods. And so it's like when I hit my 50s, I'm like, I'm pre-retirement and building that asset base and all of those sort of things. So what happened, what you're hearing there, Racquel, it was just a planned approach of how I would approach my career and how I would invest my time and my experience, build that experience to create success around me. So yeah, that's kind of like how I approached it. That 20s was all about sucking it up and dealing with so many other things. Probably crying days when you got it wrong and crying days when somebody shouted at you and getting through that emotional roller coaster, especially as a female, that is something that I did a lot of in my 20s.
I love that. And I love the fact that you had a plan, so you're like, listen, 20s are for this, 30s are for this. And I don't want to tell your age, but what are the 40s for? You talked about the 50s, like you're not like you're.
So I love how you picked that out, right? You just found the puzzle. I have no idea what my 40s are for. So my mom used to always say the 40s are your best part of your life. And she was, so I think that I carved that space out to say, I'm going to explore life in my 40s. And I don't know what that would be like, because you create foundation and then you build on foundation in my 30s, and then in my 40s it's really, I guess, crystallizing it and exploring what that can be in my career. That is really what it is. It's because you spend so much time creating and building, and it's not the place of finding your identity in a whole other world, because you now have so much years of experience. So I guess that's what my 40s is going to be like.
I'm gonna give you something for your 40s. Your 40s are for fearlessly expanding your horizons. So whatever was the vision that you had and the plan that you had, it gets exponentially bigger in your 40s. That's what I'm going to give you for your 40s.
I love that. I love that. It just feels limitless.
It does. It does. It does. It does. So who gave you that opportunity to really to start that department and to create that whole new world in your 20s? Because I think that's really important for being able to recognize talent and then to unleash them to have the ability to create. That is such a gift, both to the giver and the recipient. So who gave you that opportunity?
So I went to it for Maritime Life of the Caribbean. So my leader at the time was Andrew Ferguson. Mm-hmm. So he, strangely enough, I went to interview for another job and for another company, and he decided to keep me on at Maritime Life and basically explore what can be done from the skill set that he would have seen in the interview process. So yes, he did take a huge chance on investing in myself and giving me this opportunity. And again, in my very young 30s, a chance, right, to see what this person can bring to the table. And yeah, it was a phenomenal experience. It was it was tough because you're building foundation up. And then you also, at that point, it was my first experience dealing with management, because I had moved from a senior analyst role into a manager's role. Nice. And of course, manager with creation. So it was a very, very rewarding experience, as you can tell, because it meant that in that same bucket of my 30s, I was able to jump to prove to a regional company like JMMB that I can be the CEO at the age of 37. Nice. So that was the jump point. Maritime gave me that opportunity. They saw it and they invested in it, and it was a phenomenal experience.
And you took it, which I think is really important as well, because I think the journey of becoming C-suite and to become a C-suite leader, yes, it is that you have to have that passion, you have to have that desire, you have to have that drive, you have to have the skill, you have to have the talent. But I think so many of the people that I see have all of those things, and then the opportunity isn't presented. So it is about, creating, being ready and wanting it, and then having that opportunity and those doors open for you. So you mentioned the fact that was, your first managerial role. What kind of manager were you, and what kind of leader are you now?
So I was a technical manager at the time. So my technical expertise was the key to the role and key to the success. Mm-hmm. So it was about putting in foundation, building frameworks, knowing when it's the right time to bring additional resources into the unit, those sort of things. That was my role as in that capacity. It really was just, all around technical capabilities, and what I would have had over that time was I was managing a much smaller team, definitely much smaller team. I was managing like 3 persons back then. And, it gave me a feel of how different personalities operate and how to create a oneness in an environment, and how to, and I think one of the things I learned was how to protect and grow and push. And then when I came into this role, I was now suddenly responsible for 35 team members. Mm-hmm. And ultimately I had a reporting line of 7 persons coming in, and not junior team members. It's all leaders reporting in. So what happened in that previous role was that I was able to understand people. I was able to understand myself a little bit. I would say a little bit because in this role, I had to understand myself in a whole grand way, where you have to know what you're bringing to the table constantly. And you have to know, as a leader of leaders, you have to know your value base, because you are basically coaching and mentoring, and you're also responsible for strategic delivery and being able to pinpoint when things are not in their right and not happening in the right way to drive the business, right? So there was that little foundation, but I think everything got exponential when I came here, and I had to basically dig very deep, lots of learning, lots of reading, lots of leaning on my mentor in JMMB, because I identified a mentor when I came in, and I stayed very close to that person who gave me coaching advice as well. And creating that vulnerability for learning was really good. And I would say creating vulnerability with my team as well. So the team knew that I wasn't perfect when I walked in the door, and I asked them to support me, and they really did. So that vulnerability helped me grow as a person, and it helped me grow as a leader, and just to really understand where I stand right now, which is that I'm really invested in my team's potential. I really am. And I've gone through a 2-year cycle with them, and I think they know it. They know it now, and they're very convinced that I'm here for them in a very, very kind and sincere way. But it means that we're about getting this business done. It's about getting the business done. You succeed, I will succeed. And if we both succeed, the entity succeeds. So that's part of the conversation, actually. So it's really using that technical base and stepping in to earn the trust of the team. And this role that has allowed me to convert myself into a people person, a people leader, and a people leader with the drive around strategy and the drive around success and creating accomplishments that we both can enjoy and all our other stakeholders enjoy as well. Most importantly, our shareholder.
Fabulous. Oh, that's so much. So I love that, the creating vulnerability and embracing imperfection, investing in potential, earning trust. And that would have been a challenge, considering that you would have come in just before everybody was separated and sort of locked in their homes. What was that process like of developing trust and creating that oneness that you talk about in that new and different virtual environment?
So yes, that was a really, really tough experience. I have to first give credit to JMMB, right? JMMB has a very unique culture. We are guided by the vision of love. And the culture that exists in here is a very, very, very unique culture. So when I came in and I was introduced as their CEO, I asked for an agreement, which is I want to make the right decisions, and I want you to help me make those decisions. That was my first statement to my team. I think that was a great statement in hindsight, given that 2 weeks later we went into full lockdown mode, and I was leading from home for 2 months. I think it was about 2 months, right? 2 to 3 months.
At least, yeah.
And so I give credit first to the culture of the organization, where they were able to welcome me. And the previous leader was luckily here to transfer that relationship and that trust. So there was some amount of transfer from Ron Carter, who was really, really supportive of me joining the organization. And so that helped a lot. And then what I would have done in terms of creating a virtual relationship was on Mondays, I would send out a little note as frequently as I could have, just sharing, just like a motivational chat, and we can do this, and it's very tough, and it's a really hard time to be who we are, and just really sharing with the team, and sometimes share a quote, and start the week from that energy space. So I try to get it out before 8 a.m. that would happen, and then we would do lots of virtual meetings. So I would do like team leaders meeting, and then going into team meetings, and then I would open the conversation up. And there were times I would
space for others to share and yeah.
And then I would also share stories so that they felt that they got to understand who Tricia Kissoon was, because it's difficult reporting into a new leader when you're in office. But imagine virtually, you don't get a feel or touch. You don't get an emotional impulse. You just see from, like, as you do here, from your shoulder up, right? So you're not seeing the rest of me. And that was, I think, sharing like stories and my travel stories and stuff like that made them feel like, okay, I know this woman. She's about something. And over time it just got better and better. And I mean, yes, it was a very hard climb for both of us, but they stuck by me.
Yeah. So you talked about the things that you learned on the journey, and I loved the, coming into JMMB and learning that being a leader of leaders means that you have to know what you're bringing to the table, and also that sharing of creating that connection through the sharing of stories. So on the learning what you bring to the table, tell me from your perspective, what do you bring to the table? What do you see as the thing that you bring to the table?
That's a very deep question. To get to this place takes a lot of introspection, and a lot of us are, it's a very hard thing to do. That's what I've come to see as a leader. A lot of us, to lead, you have to introspect, because especially when you promise to give the best of yourself. I think for me, it's just, you just have to learn to be patient with yourself. First, you have to be patient with yourself, because you're not going to get it right automatically. And then you have to ask lots and lots of questions. And I think one of the hard things I had to learn was learning to put up my hands when I didn't understand something. While it's widely capped as vulnerability, when you're in this situation, to say, guys, I don't understand what you're speaking about. What is the impact of this?
Why is this important? Yeah.
Why is this important? It's all part of the process of getting where we need to go, right? And it also plays a role in building trust. And when we look at what trust looks like, trust is really actions, right? You build trust through actions. You don't build trust because I say trust Tricia Kissoon.
Right.
So in that learning, you have to, every action you take, they're observing, everybody's observing that, your action. And they're like, is that consistent with the behavior that I saw before? So that's kind of like a gist of what it would have been like for me.
Yeah, they talk about the fact that building trust, and this is across the board, not just in leadership, but just building trust is about every interaction that you have with somebody is like making a deposit into a trust account. And each time it is, are you making more deposits than you are withdrawals? And if you over time make far more deposits than withdrawals, then if you make a misstep, people forgive you because they're all of these backed up deposits. But if you're constantly making withdrawals, eventually you get into a situation where you are, like any other account, you're overdrawn. And then the sort of hill that you have to climb, either to reestablish trust or reopen the account, is at times insurmountable. So it really is important to just continue to make those trust deposits, to open yourself up, to create that vulnerability, to let them see who you are, to be able to say, listen, I don't know and I don't understand, and you're going to have to explain this to me, and be willing to subject yourself to that scrutiny so that they know, listen, I am opening up, and that clears a way for you to open up as well, or to invite you in so that you can look around and realize that you have the ability to trust me.
Yes, because there are times, honestly, where you make a decision and they don't understand why the decision is happening, because as a leader you do, right?
Yeah.
And they just don't understand, but they have to, over time, that very same bank is going to be like, she's making that decision for the right reason. I just
Yeah.
don't know the reason right now. And then what happens is that I sit down and have a conversation. Okay, so this is happening, guys. This is what occurred. And this, so I get them involved. And that comes with part of the empowerment, right? Because when the team is involved, it's an empowering environment that we're creating. Because for me, where I work in investments, investment is all about human capital.
Yeah.
All about these persons knowing that they are valuable enough to create. And that is gold. That is gold for me, for my success as a financial services entity. And for me, every action that I take has to be around creating that empowerment and creating that desire where if I think outside of the box, Tricia's not going to say, don't do that.
Right.
You know, I can vet it through Tricia, and Tricia's going to be like, did you think about this? Did you think about that? No. Yes. But, you know, it's that, because what we want to deliver, and that's where the common goal comes into play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Common goal, once the goal is clear, what we want to do and what we want to achieve, then everything that's happening around, that trust building, that when that decision, when I'm dipping into my bank on a negative, everything is going to be like, no, I've seen Tricia in other situations. She's got my back.
Right. When you have to make a withdrawal, you know, because you don't have time to explain why you're doing something, but you like, I need you to trust me in this moment. You know that you've made enough deposits into that trust account to be able to make a withdrawal because you know your balance is set, your balance is solid.
Correct. Because it comes with so many other things. It comes with creativity. I'm empowered to be creative. I'm empowered to move the needle. I'm empowered to share my opinion when it's not there.
Yeah, when it's contrary to the sort of popular convention. But everybody's moving left, and I'm like, no, I really feel like it should be moving right. But I'm willing. I know that I have that capacity within this organization, the freedom to move in a different direction and to openly say that.
Right, exactly. And just because I'm in financial service, I'll say it's never just that free, but because we are heavily regulated, but it's within the context of creation, and everybody knows and understands their responsibility and we deliver from a passionate place. Yeah. But that openness creates conversations. So, at the start of the year, we had a little bit of while we were building strategy, and I had a shortfall. And, I'm like speaking to the leaders. I'm like, guys, what are we going to do here? And, we left the meeting with a level like we discussed. No, we cannot show up in this way. We have to show up the right way. Otherwise we will, it's going to impact on our own brand, like with whoever the stakeholder was. And everybody walked away from that meeting. And then a week later, one of the leaders came into my office and was like, Tricia, I have a solution.
So nice.
Yeah, I have a solution. And the person explained the full solution, the work that they put in to that solution and buy-in that they got from other people. Now it's a group, right? So we have support straight across you. And the person just presented an opportunity, and guess what? It was the best thing possible.
Nice.
It was the best thing possible. And that has been something that we use that as an opportunity for everyone to know that they're empowered to come forward and create ideas. Because guess what? Tricia Kissoon is not going to have the greatest idea every single day.
No. And I love that when you tapped into, that you make mistakes, because I can tell you from my career, I have made far more mistakes than I've gotten it right. I've gotten it wrong far more often than I've gotten it right. But as long as you're learning from those things, it is never truly a mistake. It is an opportunity that keeps opening and opening and opening, and realizing that freeing yourself from the notion that you are going to get it right 100% of the time is utter ridiculousness, because I learn far more from the things that I get wrong than the things I get right.
Yeah, because, they say failure is the learning curve, right? And
Yeah.
but it also when you fail, you have so much anxiety, right?
Yeah.
You give yourself a hard time, and as a woman, it feels different. It
Yeah.
feels different. That anxiety is different, because we're emotionally connected, right? In a different way. And it's what I found is coming through failures, have learned to control that level of anxiety.
Yeah.
And what I found is when you fail, you operate from your fear center first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And what I've learned,
that will be your undoing every single time. You cannot operate from a center of fear. Oh, I love it. Yes.
so when you operate from that fear center, you are starting to shut down every single thing around you.
Yeah.
And you're the decision maker as a leader, right? So that's not healthy space. So what I've found is when you're going through failure, you have to learn and you have to grow, so that you pull yourself out of it much faster. So recently I had an experience where, where something triggered me to operate from my fear center. And automatically I'm like starting to shut down, like, oh my God, why is this happening to me? This is unfair. Da, 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 da. And then I was like, not happening. Break this thing down. Yeah. So I pulled I felt really proud of is that I pulled myself out in a very short space of time from my fear center and went in from a very strategic standpoint and just was able to pinpoint and break it down and like, no, not true, not right. Yes, I agree. I take responsibility. Da, da, da. And when you do that, you're moving on and you're going through it faster. And that those failures are key because you learn plenty of things. You learn how your mind structurally handles a situation.
Yeah. And
then you learn. In my case, I learned what is needed to pull myself out of that fear center as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And then, you learn what the execution should look like, because sometimes we fail at execution as well.
Yeah. I think it's a regional issue, and that we have some of the best ideas. We have some of the best, we have phenomenal capacity, but when it comes to execution, even as good as we are, we do not live up to our potential in terms of our execution. We just don't. Yeah.
And it's because and it depends, right? If you create that vulnerability, you're going to learn what is create. There's a block. There is a block. What is that block? Is it you? Or is it uncertainty? And I think that is what, when you break it down, you break that down so quickly, you're pulling yourself out of failure mode and into execution mode. And that is key, I think, for each of us.
Thank you so much, Tricia. This was an amazing conversation. We have so much in common. I mean, everything from being raised by, being raised as only children to a number of other things, working through Ministry of Trade, working with investment promotion agencies, come all the way through. I love it, and having a plan and executing according to that plan. I'm excited for you in the next phase of your development. And so with that, I invite you to thank you for joining us on this episode of Getting to the Top, where I interview transformational leaders about their leadership journey. And I hope that if you haven't yet, that you subscribe and you follow us and encourage us and make recommendations to us as to how we build this following, this movement of getting more gender equitable leadership across the world. And so thank you so much. And thank you once again, Tricia, and see you next time.
Thank you.